So, you're a perfectionist. You probably wear that like a badge of honor, telling everyone you just have high standards. But let's be real for a second. You're exhausted, aren't you? Exhausted from performing for a crowd that, honestly, probably doesn't even care that much. Well, today we're going to get into the brutal psychological truths behind that perfectionism. We're going to see why it looks like ambition, but feels a whole lot more like a prison. And look, we're kicking things off with a heavy hitter. Over a century ago, the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche basically called it out. He said that this obsession we have with being flawless, it's not really about pursuing greatness. It's more like a cowardly retreat from the messy, chaotic, and totally real process of actually creating something. This idea is kind of the philosophical anchor for everything we're about to unpack. And that really brings us to the core question, doesn't it? I mean, you've probably been told your whole life that your high standards are a strength, right? A virtue that makes you special. But what if that constant need to get everything just right isn't a strength at all? What if it's a prison that you and only you have built for yourself?
Yeah, let's just call it what it is, the perfectionism prison. Because it is a trap, one that you've imposed on yourself. And the bars on that prison, they're made of your own impossible standards. You tell yourself it's all about quality, about caring for the little details, but if we're being honest, it's a performance. And that performance is leaving you completely drained and totally stuck.
All right, so what's the first brutal truth we need to face here? It's this. Your perfectionism isn't a sign of your strength. Nope, it's actually a mask you wear to hide your own inner chaos. This is a huge point, so let's really break this down. Okay, here's how it's all connected. Think about it. When do you obsess the most over tiny, insignificant details? It's usually when your inner world feels completely out of control, right? That urge to micromanage every single little thing, that's not discipline. It's terror. You're terrified that if you let go for even 1 second, the whole thing will just fall apart. So you build this strict, perfect outer shell, but it's really just hiding how fragile you feel on the inside. And that, naturally, leads us to the second hard truth. This constant performing, this obsession with the outer shell, it's caused you to confuse what you do with who you are. You've actually started to believe that the perfect performance is your identity. You know, the famous psychologist Carl Jung had a name for this. He called it the persona. It's basically the social mask that we're all trained to wear to survive, to fit in, to be accepted. Think back to when you were a kid. You probably learned pretty quickly that being the perfect one, the one who never messed up, well, that's how you got praise. That's how you got love. And that taught you a really dangerous lesson, that love isn't something you just get. It's something you have to earn through a flawless performance. And this comparison really lays out the whole tragedy of it all. On one hand, you have the mask, your performance. It has to be flawless, right? It's carefully curated for an audience, and what it gets you is a conditional kind of love. The problem? It feels hollow, empty. But then, on the other hand, you have your soul, your real identity. It's already whole, it doesn't need to be watched, and it's unconditionally worthy of love. The real danger is when you identify too much with the mask, you start to lose touch with your soul. The louder and more perfect the performance gets, the emptier you feel inside. All right, now for the third truth, and this one, well, this one might hit a little harder. Your perfectionism, it's actually a really clever form of self-sabotage, and it's being driven by that hidden, fearful part of yourself that Jung called the shadow. So let me show you how this plays out. It's a cycle. It starts with a big ambition, a great idea. That's step one. But then, almost immediately, your shadow kicks in and sets these totally unrealistic, impossibly high standards. Step two. That, of course, triggers an intense fear of failure. I mean, how could you possibly meet those standards? That's step three. So what do? You procrastinate, you delay, you find all these clever reasons to just stay stuck. That's step four. Because hey, if you never finish it, no one can ever criticize it, right? And that's why this quote is so powerful. Your perfectionism is just old pain dressed up as high standards. See, it was never really about the high standards. It's a defense mechanism. It's all that old pain and those old fears. Absolutely terrified of what might happen if you actually succeeded, if you actually changed your life. So, okay, that's the diagnosis. It's a prison, it's a mask, it's self-sabotage. How do you break free? How do you drop the act and actually start living? Well, the solution begins with having a really honest conversation with yourself. Here's a really practical way to do that. The next time you feel yourself starting to obsess over some tiny detail, just pause. Stop what you're doing and then quietly ask that fearful part of yourself, what are you really afraid will happen if this is just good enough? And then listen. Seriously, just listen for the answer. Don't judge it. You'll probably hear an old fear, maybe a memory of being criticized. And once you see it for what it is, you can make a different choice. You can choose messy action over perfect inaction. And this right here is the whole key. Bringing that fear out into the light, it takes away its power. Awareness really is the antidote, because every single time you choose to take that messy, imperfect action instead of waiting for some fantasy of perfection, you are proving to yourself, bit by bit, that it's safe to be real, it's safe to be human, it's safe to be imperfect. So let's bring this all together, shall we? It really is time to take that messy step. It's time to stop performing and start living. It's time to take off the mask and just move forward. And I really want you to let this next thought sink in. You aren't a machine. You are not built to be flawless. You are a human being designed for growth, for learning, and for that messy, chaotic, and truly beautiful reality of creation we talked about at the very beginning. So, I'm going to leave you with this final question. And I want you to really think about it. Forget about perfection for a minute. Forget about the imaginary audience you're performing for. What is one small, messy, beautifully imperfect step that you are going to take for yourself today?